right, I'll call the November 19th DRB meeting to order. Agenda changes? None? If everybody can review the minutes of November 5th?
I have no changes.
I have a couple.
Important?
Well, yeah, a little bit. One's just a typo.
I've given up in commas and things
I'll
like
give that separate, but on the paragraph on the second page where it starts with Alex W. said it is beyond the 15-year mark. So the town can enforce it as a zoning regulation. The town can enforce the previous subdivision condition. Is, I think, the proper, yep. Item, the paragraph that starts with item 3, lack of drainage. I think, and that's comma 15% slopes,
Okay.
right? That's the subject, yep. And then on next page, item 6, deer wintering area and core habitat didn't really make sense. These are on other, I think what wants to say is
They're on other lots.
these are on part of the lot not being developed. Or parts of the lot not being developed. Right, okay.
Or on lots not being developed.
Well, parts of this lot and other lots that are, well, parts of the lot not being developed and other adjoining properties. How about that? That explains it, yeah. That's it.
Move to approve as amended.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, up next, Jade Jenny and Danielle Horan. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Sketch plan review for a 2-lot subdivision.
This is probably the quietest I've ever seen this one.
It is quiet.
We should have come a couple weeks ago, is
Yeah.
what I've seen in video.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Bless you. You all know me, Hans Jenny, Jade Jenny. Hans is the father of Jade, looking to, the purpose of we're here tonight is to look at a 2-lot subdivision of Jade's property, 31 acres in size. Bless you.
Good timing.
The purpose is to carve a 3.41 acre lot off the westerly side of the property, utilizing a drainage feature for where that line would be established. A small stream that traverses the property north to south and then crosses O'Neill Road. You can see by the western, right along the western edge would be a driveway, house site in the middle of the field, or in the field.
O'Neill's going north-south.
O'Neill's going east-west.
Oh, that's O'Neill.
Yeah, this is O'Neill.
Is that Carpenter then?
Carpenter, well, I guess it turns to Carpenter right there and heads to Charlotte.
Okay.
Because it's
The western edge of this property is the town line.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. Development with one single-family home right at this location approximately would be served by a mound system that would be off-site and on a knoll that would be on the remaining 27 and a half acres, just a little over 27 and a half. Currently, the house where Jade built last year, 2018, is here. That was done permitted under the original O'Neill subdivision, and then the building envelope was revised to slide it up the hill more out of the lower field area. So in terms of, we've read through the staff report, there were some comments that were made relative to the agricultural land, the wetland areas, stream setbacks. We have, at this point, prior to sketch, we had to get the wetlands delineated because the growing season was over as of October 25th, so that was done. We are actually planning to meet out with the state wetlands ecologist on Friday. She's a little hesitant because of the snow. We're hoping that goes, but the flags are there, the delineation has been done, the wetland boundary that you see on the current map, that's the VSWI map. That is going to change. That wetland does slide to the east. It's at the base of the slope. There is one drainage feature that comes up in this area that's more or less just a little tributary of that wetland or a little finger of that wetland. There would likely be some buffer impacts, and there may even be a wetland crossing. We have reviewed that with the state and plan on sort of confirming and following that up with a site visit. So that may be one option. That will likely require or could potentially require a state wetlands permit to get the driveway in through the house site. The field is long and narrow. It does have statewide mapped agricultural soils. They're not prime soils. It is very narrow in size. Not really ideal for any large agricultural machinery. I guess you could make the case for having some sort of small scale. Overall, you're probably looking at 2.5 acres of actual land that is agricultural land. So it's relatively small. You can see most of this here is sort of wooded on the westerly boundary, or excuse me, on the easterly boundary of the 3.4 acre parcel. So, and they're also, in regards to stream setbacks, what we plan on doing when we go through and finish up getting the wetlands flags. We did get most of them. We weren't able to get all of them because the Vermont Corps stations were down the day we did that. The network was down for the GPS, so we had to let that come back up. Once we do that, we can also sort of get a top of stream bank boundary. The LiDAR contours that you have a boundary up in here, but that's not actual top of stream bank. I think Mitch was there for a site visit and pulled some tapes and looked at it. It is narrow. There will be a setback from the stream that will limit the buildable area, but it is still a possibility once we do believe it's a possibility once we get that stream bank identified and are able to put that setback on. We just haven't done that as sketch.
So my computer is stuck in my office, but is it my understanding that this proposed lot is the last allowable lot for the subdivision?
That's correct.
And I assume you guys have given thought to the configuration to make maximum use for that? And
We have, yep.
okay.
In large part, the main body of the parcel would stay over. That, what you see there, Greg, I know you haven't done a site visit yet, but it's sort of a natural.
I know the area well.
Okay, so it's a natural draw, natural boundary.
Yeah.
That's kind of why we wanted to subdivide that
Natural
piece, just
feature.
because it's already kind of separate from the main property.
So we talked about steep slopes. Where exactly are the steep slopes?
Well, I don't know, the steep slopes are over the bank, but
Okay.
where any of the proposed development
Got
is,
it.
We have
I looked at your map and it was all 0 to 5% and 5 to 10, 5 to 15.
Oh, where you're proposing development, or?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
I would say by and large, the slopes out in that field are 5% or less.
We actually have we have a couple of photos that we've included in that. This is a picture of the field. This is looking north. On the right side, you can see the trees that are there, and that's where there is a steep drop off to the stream, the wetlands, that particular area. And on the left is very close to the boundary of the property, the town line. You could also see in, actually, in this area over here,
The
that,
drainage.
that drainage depression.
Yep.
It seems to come, there seems to be a little bit of a depression back over here, and it's sort of bringing water around like this. Trying to kind of get a good sense of it.
The house is on the other
There's-
side of that, right?
The
house is,
house,
there's a natural rise on the other side of it, and just to take off further with what Mitch is saying, I'm not sure, were you there when the wetland flags were there?
we were, yes.
You did, okay. So I actually haven't seen them. I was gone last week as well, but they,
Actually, this was like 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago when they did it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so my understanding is they cut off right at the top end of that drainage, and there'll be likely be a wetland crossing and some wetland buffer impacts once the house gets constructed. Obviously, a lot's gonna come out when we meet with the state wetlands folks on Friday. We just haven't been able to get her because it's that time of year where everybody's trying to crunch down, and she's been at a lot of other site visits, so. That'll dictate a lot of what happens in terms of a buildable location as well.
Is that a driveway or something I see on the other side of the town line that goes somewhere, or a road of some kind on the?
That, I believe, is a walking path or some kind of
It might be the cow path.
agricultural trail. Yeah.
You're talking like along the road?
No, that goes right along your property line, right along your.
Can we go back to SK1, Mitch?
You're talking on the western edge, Ted?
Talking right here.
Yeah, that right there.
Yeah, I think that's for the cows.
Is that the cow path?
The
And then
cows, the cows come in and out all the time.
and it crosses right here, right?
Yeah, when they come to the southern side, they cross over there and
Yeah.
then cruise up.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
So what's the little road that looks like it's going out the northern,
That is the Vast Trail.
and so there's gonna be a right of way for that across this new lot?
Well, there-
They just give.
It's just a permission.
They let you.
Yeah, there is not a
You
right
ask
of way.
permission.
Have a little bit of backup, if you'd like to use this.
So what is the trails issue that?
Oh, I've looked at all this stuff. I'm okay. It's just I don't have my computer with me.
Is it,
I looked
what's
at
the
stuff
trails,
before.
subject you brought up, Mitch? Staff comments?
I haven't seen the easement with regards to,
The town has existing easement to the north with landowners on Crow Hill Road and Apple Ridge
Okay,
Road.
we're talking about the trail easement?
Yes.
Let me grab this. And matter of fact, probably best if I grab the you actually have a location map on here. All right, just a little bit of background here. This is the Frost property,
Yeah,
and to the north of that is the Apple Ridge, Crow Hill, that development. And on the west side of, or going along the town boundary over here, happens to be an already established trail easements, but they cannot be utilized until there is a full connection, basically from Shelburne Falls Road, which is already, that part's done, all the way down to O'Neill Road. And we're already talking to the Frosts with their subdivision to be able to get that path.
And they were complaining that people were using their property without authorization.
There were some people who were doing inappropriate things
Same thing.
on that.
Same thing for us.
There also is a vast trail that happens to be along this edge here as well. And so the Trails Committee has been looking to get that final connection, which would open up this as a trail for the public. And in the report, the sections and so forth and the regulations were mentioned as well. So this is just something that has been on the table to be able to make that particular connection.
So it seems like it's gonna put that trail right outside the window of the house.
well, does it now necessarily, does the trail have to be along the westerly boundary?
No.
No,
Okay.
And actually,
you think it'd be more over here where there's a lot more land, not close to it.
right, I mean, if
If
they
you didn't-
wanted to, say, bring it out, I mean, obviously, some coordination could be done between these two properties as far as bringing the trail from its point about over here where it ends currently, or where the easement ends, to bring it into O'Neill Road. So there's some variability.
So a lot of this depends on also with Frost,
Right.
with their willingness to do this as well.
Because they were also talking to the people in Shaw.
Right.
Yeah, we were not demanding them to do anything.
No.
In my recollection is.
I mean, I know Rob was talking of,
Yeah, we were strongly encouraging, I believe.
To work through it, but
Yeah.
it sounds like there were people who were basically invading their land without authorization, and
You want me to? Yeah, I mean, we've noticed the same thing for us. I mean, our house sits up there and looks directly down, and we've had people routinely that come just drive their cars in the lot, run their dogs around, you know, whatever they might do with obviously no permission whatsoever. I don't know if it's just because there hasn't been a house site on there for however long, but it's been kind of.
Rob's got more land and it's further away from his house, so he may be more indifferent about that than you guys, but obviously it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if it seems to make sense if Joe would be, there's already the cow path right there, if there's somehow that can be the trail, and I didn't know, Mitch, am I correct in that this easement has been there since 2002? Is that what I
The
read?
vast trail easement?
No, I don't know, I just saw something about an easement. The
You're
easement-
talking about the easement that's further up over here?
yeah,
Yes.
you don't
Is that-
actually have an easement on that.
You don't have one at this time.
Oh, there's not one.
No.
Alright, I got it.
Except, or I should say, there isn't a trails easement. There may be some type of vast easement or vast,
Yeah, I
for the
already talked- I
snowmobiles.
already talked to the Vast Trail, to Norm Tebow, who lives, I think, just across the way, had asked me about what our plans were, and I told him basically the snowmobiles would be going through the backyard and down the driveway of where the house was, and he said he understands and that he wouldn't want that either, and that they would find a workaround. It didn't seem to be a big deal from the emails I exchanged with him, but he asked us, and I said I have no problem, at least as long as it's empty. But ultimately we're giving him the land, so it'll be his decision. I'm sure none of us would want snowmobiles going 100 feet from our house throughout the winter.
right.
It is, in terms of a natural separation from the balance of the property, that is almost a standalone little piece right at the moment. That's why it
Yeah,
kind of
that's-
it almost feels like it's still your property, but that's
Yeah.
probably why people go park there and walk
Yeah.
their dogs. It doesn't seem like part of your
Yeah.
property when you're down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So the stream that runs north-south there, I'm assuming that requires a 75-foot setback?
Yeah, there's
From
some
the top of the
wetlands,
bank, yep.
there's some wetlands buffers as well.
And there's a wetland buffer as well. The stream will be inside the wet, I mean, you walked it, I've walked some of it. Hopefully you brought your tick spray. That it's a fairly little stream that goes through. I don't know if it's flows all year
I was gonna say
round.
it's usually dry or a mud pit in the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, earlier this year, we looked at a ditch that was no more than a foot wide, and it still required a 75-foot.
Yeah, that's probably what it's
Setback,
in
so-
places, it's probably not much more than.
Because
Yeah.
the reason I ask is, one, it seems, I don't really have a good feel for the scale here where 75 feet is, but it seems to start encroaching pretty close on where you've kind of drawn the house.
It'll certainly impact that, and what we'll have to do is we're gonna have to go in and shoot the top of the stream bank. I mean, that's gonna take some time, some brushing, when we go out and survey and get established to set the line, if provided we go forward, however it happens here, we have to make sure, we'll go locate that stream, we have to locate the wetland flags at the same time, we have to put both on the 75-foot and the 50-foot buffers.
Okay, so then I'm assuming the purple dotted, that's just that's not necessarily the building envelope
I'll
proposed?
zoom in on
Or
that.
that's just the setback?
Those are
That, just the zoning
zoning
setbacks.
setbacks.
Okay.
Yeah, that is just the zoning setbacks. So once we get the approval with the delineation, the wetland flag shot in, top of stream bank, which will be, you can see by the LiDAR contours, this is the bottom of the bank. The stream is actually inside that sort of flatter area where you can see. We'll have to shoot that, do the 75-foot offsets, and that's what it'll limit the buildable area on that parcel for sure.
So what about sliding the lot to the east?
Sliding the lot.
Building envelope, right? Talking about building envelope?
Well, I'm,
Or the whole lot?
yeah.
The
whole
lot line, Greg, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, can we go back to the previous slide? Slide is an archaic term.
Which one?
Large scale,
Yeah,
up in here?
so, okay. So that's our, okay, all right, I'm sorry, I'm confusing the lot line with the building envelope. Never mind.
I really don't think
But what about sliding it to the building envelope to the east?
well, the building envelope.
To get away from the conflicts on the western boundary.
So the building envelope is really gonna be dictated by what we have for offsets from the stream, from the small stream and from the wetland.
But if you moved it to the right?
If we
so-
move the division line to the right, you mean?
No, up at the top, your building envelope, am I misreading this?
There isn't, I believe, a building.
We don't have a building envelope yet.
Okay, the upper left quadrant there.
You mean like this area up here?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, okay, I'm completely misunderstanding this proposal then, and that's my fault for,
All right, well, let me zoom back into this area here.
That's fine, yeah.
And I think maybe this might be.
okay,
being able to see
I'm
it-
misreading the property.
Right. This is the proposed.
looked at this last
actually,
week and
let me grab this here. This over here is the proposed property line. This isn't so
No,
much a
I
building
get it.
envelope, this is just simply a setback line.
Yeah, I'm missing this, okay.
Right, so
Yeah.
you've got wetlands, I mean, this is just showing wetlands and wetland buffer. So basically, there's gonna be and you also have that particular drainage feature over here. So it'll be, this is all gonna change from what you're basically saying
So- Yep.
from that information. And you're gonna try to find an area either in here or in this area over here.
Yes.
As far as for a building envelope.
Correct. That's correct.
And that's gonna be dictated pretty much, because the limitation on this proposed property, and this is basically a pretty limited property. Even though it is over 3 acres, is because of all of the things that are going on along the eastern boundary of this.
Correct.
And this is a better choice, from what you're basically saying, than trying to place something, say, more in this area, perhaps this area down in here, which may be out of the view shed of this, of the existing house.
It may be out of the view shed. The one thing that would do is in terms of, and I did talk with Alex a little bit about this afternoon, you could do a small lot, half-acre lot at that area. I don't really know how Jade feels about that with being close to his house. I mean, that would be a shared access. You'd be into, the shared road agreements, shared power. Also, it also limits, if we do that, it does limit the ability for an accessory dwelling at that location, because that's one of the other items that we also tossed around, Hans and I did the other day, where if something happens and this doesn't, let's say it's, you're limited to a silo for a building, that could also be an option there, where we'd step back into this area here and be able to use that as an accessory dwelling, and it wouldn't even require a subdivision.
Is the large part of this in current use, the 27 acres?
No.
No?
Not yet.
I'd like to, we just moved in 4 months ago and
Oh,
just
okay.
haven't gotten around to getting the details and getting it done.
But it is eligible, is that
I
right?
believe, yeah.
It's usually 27 acres. I mean, they still have to do the assessment, and then current use enrollment requirements are changing all the time.
Yeah.
Typically, it's a 27 acres. They designate 2 for the building, and then they manage 25 out of that. And I'm not a current use expert. I know that's the extent.
And I guess part of the planning on this particular one is to allow that to continue, or allow it
Correct.
as that.
That's one thing we talked about.
Keeping the.
Keeping the ability to put that in.
Put it in current use, yeah. I mean, we don't have any plans to, we'd maybe like to do some agricultural work down the road just ourselves, but we have no interest in developing the property at all and doing really anything with it, aside from that, so.
Plus, this would be the last available
Yeah, I think
units.
so.
That's it.
And the green mound system shield, that's for the current house, the existing house?
That is,
Okay.
yep. That was there, that was built, permitted as part of the original Neal subdivision.
And I think I've asked this on other things. I assume that needs a right-of-way for the proposed mound system through the other property.
Yeah.
It's going through what I'm guessing is agricultural area that doesn't detract, doesn't impinge on the agricultural use.
It doesn't, some of that's even considered wetland up in there. I did have the wetlands ecologist look at that. And we're gonna we got a wetlands permit for the O'Neill subdivision, which was done and permitted, and has actually not expired yet, and we can bring materials in and cross the wetland here and bring it over to install the mound system. So that was one thing that kind of works to the advantage here.
It doesn't keep you from doing agricultural operations over the force main, though.
No.
Oh geez, no.
Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no.
assume you plowing fields, you're not gonna.
That force main
That's
is
4 feet down.
That's 5.5 feet. Is
5.5 feet.
Yeah.
That's pretty much wooded
Depends on
for
big
most of
plow.
that anyway,
Yeah.
or partially
Yeah.
wooded.
And there's no issue with, so you're obviously gonna have to trench through the stream in order to
Well, in
get
all
there.
likelihood, the way the and I talk a little bit about it with Hans when we get to the design phase, but something like that, I would directional bore it. They'd do 700 feet, it would come up, and they'd take it from there. It's the way we directional drill most of these. If you go underneath a wetland and you drill underneath, it doesn't trigger a wetlands permit. And it's really square footage wise, linear footage wise, the price has come way down. And it takes them about a day to do it. It is really something.
That's good to file away in long-term memory for the board, for people who.
Right.
It's a little more costly, but it's well worth it.
Getting less costly.
Yeah.
Actually end up saving a lot of other monies in the process.
Just in terms of cleanup and time and machines
I
and
think they did that on ours,
they did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wetland permits, you don't have to.
No wetland. If you go underneath the wetland, you're fine. There's no wetland. It doesn't trigger a permit.
So on the trails, you guys are gonna talk to the Trails Committee and
I told Lenore, I don't know if it's a man or woman, I'm not really sure. She emailed me asking, I said, I told her, one, we were honestly planning on putting signs up because we've had random people just coming and kind of using our lot, and that's, I don't know, not what we want to look at on a Saturday afternoon, people flying drones and running their dogs around down in our field without permission. And I said the likelihood that we want a trail going through our backyard is not high, especially with, I don't know, I know there's trail system a mile down the road, and and she said, she responded with fine, okay, something along those lines.
all right.
Happy to forward.
Well, I think we have
email.
language from the Frost approval that might be informative of what people should be looking at for the adjacent property. At least it's considered going forward.
So is the town, Lenore and company, working with Charlotte to consider, an easement on the other side of the line? I mean, clearly Charlotte would also benefit from the trail. So I'm not looking at you guys, but I'm asking.
There is, there is some connection, to my understanding, with the trails. And there's also a memo that I believe that Lenore actually submitted as part of this application. So there is some cross benefit between the two. The only thing is that I believe this particular portion is being accommodated by Hinesburg, where Charlotte does other parts of the trail. And the challenge is the Hinesburg Trails Committee can't really set up things in Charlotte without that
Yeah.
type of
Oh,
coordination.
yeah, I get that. It just seemed like, why can't we meet in the middle somewhere and then, are we even talking to them, or we just have to assume we have to solve it on the Hinesburg side of the line?
I believe she does have conversations with her counterparts there, but
I do know that was one of the discussions that we left with Rob, the Frost subdivision, was trying to have it be more accommodating with an open field on the edge of the field. Whereas if it goes through the Frost parcel, they're gonna have to cut trees on his side. So it actually makes.
Comes way over to the east side.
Well, if you zoom, if we go up a little bit, you can see where the wooded portion is on the Frost property. Frost is all wooded along
Frost
his.
does not want it further east.
He doesn't want a 10-foot swath cut down his property line. Can't say as I blame him when there's
Sure.
a huge open
Sure.
field on that other side of the property line.
So it seems to me this is a perfectly provable lot. We can beat ourselves up on all these issues that are kind of unforeseeable in the future and require coordination. But I think
What
we
about the
could,
waiver for making it a minor?
I think that's easy, in my mind.
You guys all up with that?
Yeah,
So why would this be a major?
because the number of lots have been cut out already. It's cumulative is what?
right, it's cumulative over a 10-year period. And even if you split the O'Neill subdivision north and south, combined you end up with with 4 more lots, which pushes this into the major subdivision territory. Technically, the idea behind it was not to circumvent the regulations, but the board has the ability, looking at situations like this and saying, no one was trying to circumvent anything. They've gone through some other particular processes to get to this point. So you have the ability to basically allow for a combination preliminary final subdivision review.
Yep.
And if, which it may, when we get the wetlands setbacks on and we meet with the wetlands lady out there on Friday, if it does trigger a wetlands permit, they may not issue that until the spring. Because they actually have to see.
For final delineation or?
Well, so it's been delineated by a wetlands ecologist
Right.
who we've hired, who's a professional, but they have to verify the
Right.
delineation during the growing season.
Right.
I think we had this situation last year, another wet year.
Yep.
So it sounds like in 6 months' time, you might not be ready for a final.
Well, she may come out on Friday and she may look at it and say, you guys look conservative here, and she may agree, or she may say, well, I may have to come back in April 15th or beyond there. So, time will tell.
So from a house location standpoint, why is this the best place on the lot?
It's actually the highest in elevation, I would think, on that. It does it's really flat back to to the little finger that comes out of the wetlands, and then it does sort of rise up when you get to that other area. It's a nice location in terms of it's not right in Jade's view shed. I mean, it's kind of off.
No, we actually wouldn't even really be able to see the house.
No.
There's
Yeah.
enough, quite a few large trees there right along where the property line will be. So yeah, we won't even really see it.
But it's not much higher in elevation, right?
2 or 3 feet, maybe. I mean, there's not a steep slope issue there. I mean, if anything, it's, you know, it's pool table flat. It's flat.
Yeah, and this area in the middle here is somewhat lower. Because you've got a higher area over here, it comes down, actually it just continues to go down a bit, but this is much flatter than what you have here and what you have coming up here. And then and then just comes back up after the stream over here
Yeah.
to that little higher.
It
Yeah.
rises.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say where our house is and those are the two flattest areas on the whole property.
Really?
We're up on like a kind of a plateau, I think it's all limestone.
Yeah.
And then that area down there is completely, you know, as you guys have seen, aside from that little swale, it's pretty flat, maybe a very slight incline. Everything else on the whole property pretty much has pitch to it.
So obviously the setbacks from the wetlands and the stream banks, property lines will dictate the building envelope once we.
Okay.
Board members have any other questions? Don't believe there's anybody here from the public, other than,
Don't think so.
Other than us.
I would move to close the public hearing, direct staff to draft conditions of approval, and also to combine preliminary and final as one review meeting.
Second.
any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. We have an extension for somebody?
Yep. Mary Provencher got and I'll just bring up one of the plans to kind of remind you of that. And actually, maybe let me bring up the location map first. So this way here, you could see, it's a property on Lake Iroquois.
Yeah.
And she came in, well, let's see, she came in to do a expansion of a non-conforming
Oh, yeah.
structure. She's been dealing with a whole bunch of different contractors and trying to find the right, she's also, right mix. She's also been toying with the idea of coming back to modify this a little bit. I've spoken to her about that. The board can, per section 8.5 of the zoning regulations, extend a conditional use application once for an additional year, and that's what she's basically asking for.
So the approval is when?
The approval was in, was December 2018.
So we're
A
10
year.
months in now, and she's looking for another year?
She's looking for one more year to get this set up.
So
She just has to get started, or she has to finish?
I don't believe she's started. I think
No,
she's
but you
been,
just have to get started for it to,
you need to get a building permit.
Right.
And she hasn't gone for a building permit because she's been considering modifying this approval.
Well, I would move to approve a year that will give her one building season, so.
Yeah, and that's
Official cut
actually,
date.
and that's all the board can do is one additional year on a conditional use.
I'll second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
So what's large erratic?
I don't know.
It's a big rock.
Okay.
It's actually when it,
Does it move?
no, it's actually partially buried too. The reason we put that into there was just to say this was like an unbuildable It's an unbuildable area. And in actuality, the eastern part of the property is at a much higher elevation than
Right.
the west.
I remember that.
So it's typical of a lot of the properties.
But the
in
larger
that area.
attic could come loose and come down and crush the
Larger attic.
the smaller,
If it got a little unburied, maybe, who knows?
maybe within another eon.
Next meeting is
I wonder if I
the
wasn't here
return
for
of,
this
go ahead.
No, I don't remember this one. I just wonder if I wasn't here for it or something, because I remember a number around Iroquois. I just don't remember. This
Yeah.
one's not ringing any bells.
Yeah, we've had a few. Then again, any type of development on any of these lots usually requires some type of expansion of a non-conforming. Whether it happens to be setbacks, which is usually the case, and a couple of situations where something has to be modified to deal with the 10% maximum lot coverage that you have on the shoreline district.
So are we on Dynamite Hill next time?
Dynamite Hill is on the agenda for next
Are they
for
going
next
to
meeting.
meet our deadline, or?
I have been talking to, I've been speaking to the parties. I'm also trying to set up a meeting with the applicants and with our fire chief. I think that's probably the most critical part on that.
They need a
Well, that
dose of
and,
reality check.
that and telling us what they're gonna do about the road.
Yes.
Well, not just the
and-
fire chief, but the,
And,
entryway onto,
and in my conversations, they've talked about some
And it's not
significant upgrades.
approved, is it? It's not approved, is it?
no.
No, so it's
There's a
It's very unfortunate that he used the phrase waiver, because the town processes are convoluted, and confusing. So I can see somebody getting a letter from a town official that says something's waived and saying, okay, it's waived. I don't have to come back in June or whatever the date was.
But
So
to-
I can't fault them too much. I do fault our zoning administrator of the time for not following up.
Right.
Who also, I think, was an extreme neighbor.
No. So, the town is as much at fault for not following up as the applicant. So I hesitate pushing too hard because I could see how the confusion and misunderstanding can happen.
Right. The only thing is that in that letter that you're quoting, a couple of paragraphs above it, or a paragraph above it, it does mention going back to the.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So you've got that type
That in
of,
itself is confusing.
yeah.
But as the development grows and gets bigger, then
Well,
we have to.
so that's,
do-
they kept saying, well, do you do this all the time? And I said, absolutely we do. As you add more houses to a road, to a development, you reassess what's going on.
Well, to be
so
continued on December
that's not
6th.
Yes,
problem.
yes, yes.
So
It's
something I
that
did think of
and-
on that one.
So they may or may not come back in time. Issues to be worked out. They're on the,
we're gonna
they're on the
try.
schedule.
They're on the schedule.
Yeah.
We're going to give it the
We
best shot to
told
try.
them it's okay if, they need to have a further continuation. It's not, it's not the end of the world for us, certainly.
So
Is anybody else on there?
As of right now, no. There is, I hope to have the annual report ready for review by that time. And
there's something else I was
I won't
thinking
be
of.
here
for the next
for the
meeting.
next meeting.
Okay. So
After
I'll send you then that report.
So do we have a full complement of alternates now, or are we still?
Just a
We
minute.
still just have Brian. And he wasn't able to make it today.
So, question on the Dynamite Hill one. So, something we didn't talk about last time, I thought, given the length of that lane, we had requirements for, like, pull-offs at, 1/3, 2/3, a certain number, 500 feet or whatever it is.
That's, go ahead.
And that definitely, there's pull-off at the very bottom. That doesn't help you if you're, halfway up the hill, because it's not wide enough for two cars at 14 feet. It's not really wide enough for two cars to pass, so don't we typically you know, maybe it's something new in the reg or recent in the regs that requires the pull-offs.
Well, it's funny,
intervals?
the word pull-off is being used in two different ways.
Should
What
we
have-
be talking about this now?
It's still open.
I think it's just a question, and, you know, and I'll
I'm just, I mean,
defer.
it wasn't
I'll just-
mentioned, and am I wrong about because I don't remember the reg exactly, but I thought when you had a very long lane like that, that there, at certain intervals, there needed to be,
Right, if the road, what we've oftentimes done is we've had a road that was only 14 feet in width, that we've had pull-offs that expand out to 18 feet. The approval that they had actually required the road in its entirety to be 18 feet in
Oh.
width.
okay.
So the pull-off that was being discussed here was more of a pull-off for the steep grade coming down where someone can pull off if they were sliding, as
Okay.
opposed to a pull-off on that. So it's two different types of
No,
pull-offs.
okay, that's fine. I thought
I'll
the
just say
the
I
stuff
did
last week said it
watch-
was 14 feet,
Well,
Yeah.
I think he measured part of it, was 14 feet one place or something like that.
but it was supposed to be 18.
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually, that I will hold off on for the next
Okay. Okay.
meeting.
okay, that's fine.
I'll just simply say that, yes, I did watch the hour and a half.
Oh, did you? Pretty, yeah, took a long time. Okay.
It did look like a ski jump the last time I drove right by it. Straight down,
Yeah, yeah,
without the upper lip.
yeah.
All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Okay.